Despite the fact that we just had a 1 hour long direct all about the Nintendo Switch 2, there is a ton of information that Nintendo didn't even include in it. And today we're going to go through everything they didn't tell you so you can truly decide if you want to pre-order the Nintendo Switch 2. Now don't get me wrong, the Nintendo Direct we just had did give us a heap of information, like the fact that the Switch 2 is going to be 1080p handheld, 4K when docked, and we even found out that the rumors are true and you can use the Switch 2 Joy-Con as a mouse. But one thing they didn't show us is what the Nintendo Switch homepage is going to look like. So this is the picture they've shared for the homepage of the Switch. Now, being honest, I really don't think we're going to be getting any themes whatsoever. If we were going to get them, I think it would have made it into the presentation. But what we can see right now is the light mode version. Hopefully, like the Nintendo Switch, there's going to be a dark mode version to pick from as well. And although this looks very similar to what we're used to from the Nintendo Switch, there are a few changes to the icons on the bottom. First up, we can see once again we have a Nintendo Switch Online. The second one is going to be the chat functions that they talked about in the Nintendo Direct. The third one is what I assume to be news. It makes sense that if they brought a news app to our phones, they'll also bring a similar thing to the Switch. Then we have the Nintendo eShop, pictures like on the Switch, and this one I think might be the way that you can play games with a friend, with that new feature that Nintendo announced today that allows you to play 2-player games with someone else with the Switch 2, even if they don't own the game themselves, which they've now called Game Share. Then we have the controller icon, which is controller options like we have on the Switch. And then we have this Switch cartridge looking like one. We already know from the last Nintendo Direct that this is the brand new digital game sharing system, which allows you to share digital games as if you were lending a physical one to a family member. And then you have the settings and the power like we have now. And I'm not gonna lie, I am a little bit disappointed that this is so similar to the Nintendo Switch. I was really hoping they'd shake things up just a little bit, but no, this is very much just the Switch with very minor changes. We also got to see a little bit of what the Nintendo eShop is gonna look like. This shows a much more sleek homepage than what we're used to. Also, an easy way to access your wish list, which I really like. It also has similar tabs to what we're used to on our current eShop, with great deals, best-selling software, and recently releasing. But by far, the most exciting part of seeing this eShop footage is how much it doesn't lag, which to me kind of makes up for the price difference between the Switch and the Switch 2, because it is a fantastic quality of life feature. Now in the Direct, we also got the news that in addition to there being a bunch of Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games like the new Hyrule Warriors and Donkey Kong Bonanza, we also got the news of Switch 2 Edition games. Now these are games which were released on the Nintendo Switch, but can be upgraded to Nintendo Switch 2 versions. Now thanks to this article, we did find out that the Zelda upgrade is going to be included in the Nintendo Online membership. The same membership which you might be paying for already right now to also play online on the Nintendo Switch. Just one thing to note though, this will only be free with an online membership so long as you already own the base game on the Switch. So you either need Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. And this is a pretty good upgrade, as not only will the game be running at a higher resolution and a better frame rate, it's also going to have a decreased loading time and a bunch of added extras as well, including voice notes from some of the characters to find extra bits of the story, the ability to make and share designs and blueprints, photo editing, voice guides to find Koroks, item sharing with your friends, and even detailed gameplay data and achievements, which of course they don't call achievements but actually call medals. And they've also given you the option to either be able to move your save from the Nintendo Switch over to the Switch 2, or they've given you an additional game save slot so you can start the game all over again. Now, so far, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are the only Switch 2 editions we know that will be free with the online membership, but there were a couple of other games showcased as well. Now, the other games that we got shown in the Direct do admittedly have a lot more content, alongside of it being an upgraded and better looking version of the game. So for example, Kirby and the Forgotten Land has a brand new story that's coming as DLC, along with it being visually enhanced. We also know that a Super Mario Party Jamboree is going to have a bunch of other modes. And also, interestingly, this is the only game that gives an actual resolution of what the upgraded version is going to be, saying it's going to be 1440p. The only thing we don't know is what price this upgrade is going to be, and that's the thing a lot of us are waiting for. As much as I'd hope it'd be pretty cheap, we're also talking about Nintendo, so honestly, I have no idea what price they're going to go for. I think realistically, maybe it'll be the difference between a Switch game and a Switch 2 game, so that'll be what, around 20 to 25 pounds, depending on the game, but that seems a little bit steep to me, so I can't wait to find out. One thing that will be interesting is to see if Pokemon Legends Z-A or Metroid Prime 4 get included as the free upgrades, as so far these two only say that it's going to be an upgraded resolution and not that there's anything extra going to be added into the game. Now, considering the brand new Joy-Cons are likely to be very expensive, I have also found out that the normal Joy-Cons from the Switch will also work on the Switch too. Nintendo have this article here all about the compatibility of Nintendo Switch games with Nintendo Switch 2. And a large portion of this is just saying that most games are going to work pretty well on the Switch 2 that are from the Switch. But they have given us a list of games that will only work with the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons, meaning that you can't use the Switch 2 Joy-Cons to play any of these games. Now, most of these are games which we expected, like the likes of Ring Fit Adventure and Labo, which have peripherals built around just the normal Joy-Cons. There's a few games which are on this list because the new Joy-Cons don't have any IR motion cameras, so that's the likes of 1-2-Switch and also WarioWare. Weirdly, Everybody 1-2-Switch is actually on the list as well because the new Joy-Cons don't rattle as much when they vibrate as the old Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons. But they have said you can attach your normal Joy-Cons to the Switch 2 via Bluetooth, so you can still play these games. I also assume that the Switch Pro controller is also going to work with the Switch 2 as well. There really isn't that much difference between this Pro controller and the Switch 2 Pro controller. The only real thing you're missing is the C button and the extra paddles on the back, which are really optional. Now, another fantastic thing we found out about the Switch 2 is the fact that there is finally accessibility options. Now, this isn't quite as detailed as other consoles, but it is a step in the right direction. And this has things like being able to change the text size, which is going to be really useful in handheld. You can change the display colors. You can also have things like text to speech. And one really cool function which may be useful outside of accessibility is actually the button mapping, allowing you to change it on each controller for your liking, and you can save your favorite settings as well so you can toggle between them. The final thing that Nintendo didn't really talk about at all is the price, so let's cover that now. The Nintendo Switch by itself is going to cost you $449.99 US, or £395. The bundle of Nintendo Switch plus Mario Kart Worlds is going to cost you just shy of $500 US, or £430. But do note, this is a digital version of Mario Kart and not a physical. Now, if you are someone who wants to buy Mario Kart, the bundle is definitely the way to go, because Mario Kart Worlds will cost you a whopping $85 or £75 physically. Now, one unique thing that Nintendo is doing with physical and digital games is the fact that they will not cost the same amount of money. As in the UK, for example, the digital version of Mario Kart costs £8 less than the physical. But here's where the prices get even weirder, as Donkey Kong Bonanza is actually currently down for $69.99 US, which is way less than the $85 of Mario Kart. And although it isn't unheard of for Nintendo to do two separate prices for their first-party games, with the fact that we had Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild being more expensive than all of their other games, this is a little bit of a weird choice, I feel. I could see why Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were more money, and I didn't necessarily think that a Mario Kart game would have been on that level. Don't get me wrong, this Mario Kart game is massive and looks incredible, but it's still weird to see that currently be the most expensive game. Now, I do think that both the console and the games came out to be a little bit more expensive than a lot of people were hoping for, as unfortunately Nintendo are releasing this at a time that isn't great for everyone. I will say, although the games are considerably more expensive than they are on the Switch, they are more in line with what we see on like the Xbox and the PlayStation. I guess the big downside of Nintendo Switch games though is that they don't ever really come down in price. Even now when I go and look second-hand at Switch games, they're still like maybe £5 less than going and buying them new. It's absolutely ridiculous. But let me know how you feel about this and the price difference between the digital and physical in the comments down below. Now, pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch 2 are also incredibly weird. So in the UK right now, some pre-orders from the likes of Smiths have already gone up and sold out as of this video. The only date we know for sure is that Nintendo is doing their pre-orders on the 8th for the UK and the 9th for America. The only issue is they're trying to combat scalpers in a very interesting way. So in order to qualify to be in the first round of pre-orders from Nintendo themselves, you will not only need to have had a Nintendo Online membership for 2 years continuously, you will also need to have opted into sharing your usage information with Nintendo. They will then email you a pre-order invite for you to try and get the console. And whilst I respect them for trying to combat scalpers, this is an interesting way to do it. Another piece of information that was interesting to see about the Nintendo Switch 2 is not all the physical games are going to be physical games. Some of them are just going to be game key cards, which they say are regular from game cards because they don't actually contain the full game on the Switch cartridge. Instead, this is essentially a key to then download the full game over the internet. Now, they have shown that this is going to be obvious on the box. There's a little key symbol that you'll be able to see at the bottom. I get the idea on this is that sometimes some of the games that are going to be releasing maybe are going to be too large to fit onto a Nintendo Switch cartridge, but we've seen so many games manage to fit on a normal Switch cartridge that I feel like maybe this is going to be way more problematic than it is helpful. And a lot of people, including myself, are going to be super disappointed if we miss that tiny symbol on the bottom of the box, especially if it still costs more money than the digital version, only to find out that it is essentially a digital version. All in all, there's a lot to consider before you decide to jump on and pre-order the Nintendo Switch. Because whilst I don't think this whole lineup that we got in this showcase is everything that we're going to see this year, I think we're going to have a few really big directs, especially around Christmas time, saying what new releases are coming. I also think there's a lot of merit in just holding out a little bit longer. Those people who didn't buy the first Nintendo Switch were rewarded with an upgraded version. Then we had the OLED come out and special editions. So there really is a lot of reasons to not jump on the initial pre-order, but equally, I'm going to be trying my absolute best to get a hold of the Switch 2. That's it for everything that Nintendo didn't tell you about the Nintendo Switch 2. And if you want to see my entire physical collection of Nintendo Switch games, click this video here.